everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Dave Miller, and this is an episode of Life in Business. I have Sam Carlino with me, and I've known you for over 20 years, and his son Nick. And Sam is a husband, father, entrepreneur, artist, and obviously you have to be an artist to do what you guys do. So this will be an awesome episode because we're going to cover some things today kind of about that succession plan that a lot of entrepreneurs want to know about. And so we'll kind of get into that and just kind of figure out what it is they do and what drives them to do what they do. So here we go. Let's go right in. Yeah. Sam, I think when I first met you, we were selling cars at Dave Smith Motors.
Years ago.
That's a while ago. We were just talking, and we're not young bucks anymore.
That was back in the, that was when there was hundreds of us up there.
Yes.
Like, totally different time.
I haven't been up there in a long time, but yeah. It's still like huge, isn't it?
It's nothing like when we were there. Like
really?
Hundreds and hundreds of people, right? They were at one point, I want to say it was the second largest or third largest employer in the state of Idaho. I mean, that was when we were, cranking out 1,000 vehicles a month, 1,500.
Yeah, like 1,500, I remember. So it was crazy numbers. So it's not that same way anymore? I did not know that. I mean, they've got a lot of new shops and stuff up there. It looks way cooler.
It looks way better. I mean, we were in the ghetto. But, all the requirements of the dealerships and whatnot have made it, it's super nice, but it's not the atmosphere, because that was the advent, like the internet, right? The internet department, all that stuff. That was the advent of that, and then all of a sudden you could buy vehicles online.
Yeah.
That was what made it insane up there.
Yeah, it was crazy. I remember, we'd sell cars to people, and we didn't meet them until they showed up to get their car. It was kind of
You'd
weird.
get their driver's license sent to you, and you're like, hey, that's about it.
And then sometimes they'd show up and you wouldn't recognize them getting their driver's license. So kind of getting into the whole entrepreneurship. So I know you were a firefighter for a long time, and then sold cars. And then I'm really trying to go down that path of what makes people leave, because the money was good at Dave Smith. It was good money. What makes people leave that safety and security and the knowing like, oh dude, I'm gonna sell a boatload of cars and I'm gonna make some good money,
right,
to open up a shop like what you did? What can you talk about that for a little bit? Like what made you do that?
It's a good question. I think the way, you're one, I found, and I think I've done some research on it, because to start it off, a lot of entrepreneurs have a certain amount of ADD, right? They're known to have, we call it multitasking, when in all actuality it's not multitasking. We just can't focus very long on one thing or another. So that being said, I just always want to push, right? It was always this thing you're doing something and you can do it well, and you're like, man, I know I could do this even better. There's issues or things that you think, man, I could do this a little bit, we could tweak this, we could do this. And for me, it was in part wanting to take something, run with it, and create an environment that I thought might be a little more advantageous for employees, per se. Create a little bit more of a home and an atmosphere that was maybe a little bit more flexible. We still have to work. I still work, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not retired, but at the same time, having that flexibility to, come and go a little bit more and be in control of where you're going and what you're doing, and push yourself. And I think that was probably one of the biggest things is what do you think you can do? Like as a fireman, I was where I was at, and I couldn't go anywhere unless I was promoted, right? And unless this person lost to me and this person, or if this one was liked more than me, whatever it was, right? You're where you're at. There's certain amounts of earning things, and then it's civil service. There's who in certain aspects. It's what it is. And, you know, up there, when we were at Smith's together, it was great, had fun, grew with the company and whatnot. It just, I think at that point it was the hours, right? I mean, if you remember, I mean,
Yes.
we worked insane, 60, 70, 80 hours a week, right? And it was this money drive, and it was just go, 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 and feeding us Red Bulls, right? I mean, coolers of Red Bull, just go, go. And I mean, it was just crank, 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 crank. And that was your life, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
you just went. And at the time I had Nick with me, you know, and my wife. And so she's, you know, at home being a single mom, basically, at that point. And so about 9 years in is when I was like, man, I'm going to leave. And now I kind of knew it. And I thought, well, I'll go to somewhere a little more local, because up there from where we're at was a 40-minute drive.
Yeah, each way.
Each way,
So you
right?
had 2 a
You
day.
go up there and work 10, 12 hours, and you had an hour drive, basically. I mean, those were long
Yes.
days, day in and day out.
I get so tired. Making
It
that
was
drive.
exhausting, you know? And so I was like, oh man, if I can work closer to home, that'll save me a couple hours a day even, right? You
Yeah.
don't have to get up so early, spend some time with the family, maybe be home before it's pitch black outside. But it wasn't the same. The dollars aren't the same, and the atmosphere wasn't the same. And I'm sitting there one day, and I just was like, I'm done working for other people. Literally, I remember I was desking jobs, and I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to do this. I'm just done. And I had no money, no nothing. During all of this, when I was a fireman, when I was at Hot Rod, when I was at Smith's, all that, I always played with doing vehicle graphics and all that. I'd helped people. I'd done pinstriping. I started a side outfit for a company where I would go pinstripe cars on days off and just goofing around. So I had done it for several years, just as more fun, make a few extra bucks. And a gentleman called me that I had started this kind of side graphics company for, and he's like, man, I need help. We're not doing so good. And this was in, you know, that 10, 11, 12, right, kind of the recession hits.
Yeah.
Things are booming. What he had massive wholesale style accounts, right? Big, huge accounts, and that's what floated everything. And all the eggs were in one basket. Well,
Wholesale
once the
accounts for,
recession
like-
hit, he did huge, massive amounts of signage. He'd ship all over the United States.
On vehicles.
He did like store stuff.
Okay.
He did
okay.
store stuff. And what happened was, because everyone went and shrunk down, all these big accounts just stopped ordering. And he's like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Well, we had started the vehicle division, and it was kind of there, but not really doing much. And he's like, can you start January 1st? I'll give you 30 days to like fix it and run with it, because we're not doing good. And I said, I guess, I don't know, I'll give it a shot. So I'm leaving making $100,000+ a year, and I'm going to go there. And he says, I can pay you $3,000 the first month. Yeah.
Yeah. So how old
Needless to
were
say,
you when this was all going on?
my nut was a little bigger now, so we're
Yeah.
going backward right off the bat.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So,
So you were a young buck at the time.
Even at middle school? Is that when you were
Gosh.
right across the street from the
Charter.
Charter?
Mhm.
Yep. I had nothing to do with the company at that point. I
Right.
was just the one who came and
But
would help
you're-
clean the floor if needed. Yeah.
And I was wondering, because obviously a lot of entrepreneurs have kids in the game, and you're trying to obviously ramp up this new thing, because
And you
the
don't
guarantees are gone.
know. You have no idea.
And now, do you remember what that was like when you were in middle school? Like, do you remember do you remember your dad making some kind of changes or anything
Oh,
like
I knew
that?
there
or-
was a change, but it was because he was home more. When Dave Smith ended, all of a sudden Dad was home more, and then where he was working was right across from the Charter Academy in Coeur d'Alene.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
Yep, right across the street from that was the building he was working at, and that's when I got introduced to, like, I knew Dad was doing something different. I didn't know what it was,
Yeah.
but it involved cars and stickers and design work, and I was like, oh, this is kind of pretty cool. And
Yeah,
then
that is.
from there, it is just become completely
Yeah.
completely different. Like I've had people ask all the time, like, how did your dad get into this? So just the other day I asked him, I was like, so how did you start this? And that's where I just learned the pinstriping story for the first time myself, like a couple months ago.
Wow.
I was like, so how did you get into this? And I got to learn about it, and I just figured I've always been around it, and I was tired of seeing other people involved in my dad's company that weren't doing it right. And so eventually I was like, you know what, maybe I'm just going to do it myself then. I'm old
It was
enough.
a long walk to get there.
I always said I wanted nothing to do with it. I was like, yeah, I'm not really involved. Like it's not my thing. And then I don't know, you see people doing it incorrectly. I'm like, hey, like that's my dad's company. Like, I
Right.
should probably do it this way. And then I started taking things a little more personal. And then I came to him about 6 months ago, and I was like, you know what? I just do it. Can I do it? Can I just let me do it? Like at this point, like no one's gonna be more invested than family.
Yep.
And
That's
obviously, no
100% true.
one's gonna think about how he wants it operated better than me, because he raised me. So I think
Yeah.
we're both kind of on the same brainwave most of the time.
Yeah. Well, and I
Yeah.
mean, you know, as a biz owner, right? You're in the beginning. It's, you know, I always tell people the first 5 years is 24/7, 365. Period. Right? If you think it's going to be anything, if you go in expecting anything different,
Right.
then I have to do this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year for the first 5 years. Set that expectation. If you get free time, awesome. It's a blessing, take it. But if you don't go in with that mentality, you're probably going to end up being disappointed, because there's times where you're going to be working stupid early,
Oh,
stupid late
100%.
on a Sunday, or missing church, whatever it is. And so you just have to go in with that. And so what happens is, you know, which my wife was not a fan of, but it's on my head 24/7, 365. So when I was home, he's hearing everything, hearing about every single thing that's going on. I'm walking and talking through all this stuff constantly. And plus in the beginning, you're super stoked and ready to go.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, this could be awesome. And then the reality sets in of the 24/7, 365.
Yeah.
That changes a lot of it.
But it is well, for you, was it a little bit different rather than working 80 hours a week at Dave Smith Motors versus 100 hours a week on your own thing?
Yeah.
Because this is mine. You know, like for me that was because I mean, coming into, you know, what I do now with Life Public House, I mean, I used to work, I had a kind of a pretty good gig. You know, I got my job down to where I was like, you know, 35 to 45 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's 85. But it's different because it's mine. Sometimes it doesn't, I mean, obviously some things feel like work.
Right.
I don't have a janitor, so when I'm cleaning the bathrooms,
Yep.
that's just work. It's
It
not
is.
like, oh, dude, this is awesome. This is my life stream. But they're mine, and I
Right.
want them to be, you know, you want things to be a certain way.
Yep. Yep.
So you broke away from, well, no, you still do signs and stuff, don't you?
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, you've done signs for me.
Yep.
So obviously
Yep.
I know that
We
that you
did.
that.
I mean, it was, the beginning was, in the very, very beginning, you know, I took that company basically and built it up, focused on vehicles.
Yeah.
We focused on vehicles, pinstriping, graphics, lettering, logos, whatever, because that was local and it could generate immediate income instead of trying to ship stuff out. If I didn't make money right then, which was really hard, I started there, first walk in, he says, this is your new boss, to people that have been there for a long time. And I, behind closed doors, get told I have 30 days to make it happen, or he's going to shut the doors.
Wow.
I can't walk out and say, hey, Dave, just so you know, I got 30 days, or else you're out of a job. It doesn't bode well, you know. They literally would be like, oh, man, can I get out of here in time to go to an interview? Right? So you can't even say anything. So I have to walk in there and attempt to get everybody on my side, but at the same time be the biggest ball buster there is, because what they don't know is that if I don't make it happen, they're out of a job.
Right.
So I mean, just a crazy.
Right.
So I did it, pushed it. We second month, third month, we made it through. 9 months later, built it up enough. that another company wanted to come in and buy it. And so he buys it out, and in the meantime, we started a little side thing, which we'll get into that, but we started a little side gig. This guy comes in, buys this. I wasn't, at the time, a huge fan of what he wanted and how he wanted to do it.
Yeah.
And he knew about my little side thing, and he wanted to buy that. And, I'll give you 10% of whatever you do. And I'm like, well, I started it, like.
Was the side thing vehicles?
That was cart wrappers. That was the golf cart wraps. That was the initial, my
Really?
own biz.
Well, that's kind of cool.
So, the company that I had, went into was Benchmark, and they were known for a long time, great company. Started that part, and then the new guys bought them, and it ran for a while, and they did good, but then they kind of veered off and did something different. But once he sold out, I was kind of on my own with these people, and within a couple months, it was like, yeah, this is not going to happen. Like there wasn't a bunch of money there. I'm like, I got to do something like now. I've already went from here to here, and now you're trying to get me here. And they offered me 10%, 20%, 30, 50 of whatever I would do on this other thing, and I was like, you know what? How about we just split the sheets and call it good? And I'm going to go take 100% of whatever I do, which at the point was not huge, but
Right.
At that point it was, I'm just going to do that, and that was where we were doing the advertising on golf carts.
So, okay, going back to that time though, when you went from here to like here, and then there's just all that uncertainty. Was there a temptation to go back to a like a Dave Smith Motors or some type of job where you're like, because I mean, I worked with you. You're a very good salesman, so you had to know, like, dude, I could call Dave Smith up, and be at work tomorrow.
Yep.
And then they'd probably say, dude, can you make it in this afternoon?
And there was
that
no
thing?
question. Not for me.
Okay.
My wife, absolutely. Like, we, just to make the story super short, I went from here to here, and then I'm like, I'm going to push and I'm going to make this happen. And because I can sell, because I'll work hard, because I know that I'm going to push harder than anybody, I'm like, I can make this happen. But it's going to take a little bit of time, and we ended up having to start all over. I mean, I saved my house and vehicles, but we had to file bankruptcy. I had no money. And when I say no money, like, we had people dropping off food, groceries, helping us out.
Yes.
I went to California. I had a few $100. I had enough money to get to California. Is basically all I had. And I got enough to go there because there was some money in California, right up here, that wasn't, it wasn't like it is now. We were not booming economy in 2013.
Oh, I remember.
So I went to California, just chased money, and I literally just went door to door of businesses and just knocked on doors. Just like I'd go to a strip mall, I'd walk down and meet with every single person. And then I'd go to the next one, and I'd go to the next one. I just hit every single business up in all of the greater Sacramento area. Stockton, all of it, El Dorado Hills, Folsom, all of Yuma. I went everywhere and just knocked on doors and did some stuff. Went back and forth quite a bit. Once I made enough money, I was able to actually get home, which took 6 weeks of being down there, living on my brother-in-law's
What were you
couch.
selling in California?
Just door logos, window logos, trying to do graphics on the golf carts for the
So were you making
wraps.
those as well when you were in California? Like, were you selling them?
So I would sell it. I had a designer that I subbed out to make the designs, and I had somebody else that would print and ship me the graphics or make them down there if I had a guy down there, and then I'd go install it, and I would just, as fast as I could.
Yeah. Wow.
It was horrific.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the crazy thing though. I think that's kind of the idea behind doing this podcast is there's something in an entrepreneur, that mindset that 90%, maybe higher, of people would be like, you know what, I gave it a shot. Now I'm going to go back to the safety, and now I'm going to go back to the
wife's
security.
like, this is a pipe dream. You need to make money.
Yeah,
and I'm like, no. And it was. And that's I mean, like finances in a marriage is one of the biggest reasons for divorce. I mean, I have a saint of a wife. I mean, my wife is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be where I'm at if I didn't have that amazing woman with the kiddos, and now we can look back and we're good, but whew,
Yeah.
I mean, she put up with a ton.
Yeah, it's crazy, but as I talk to more and more entrepreneurs, they'll say, "Oh my gosh, this happened," and I thought it was like the worst possible thing that could happen, and I was devastated, and fill in the blanks with whatever their devastation, financially, emotional, relationally, whatever. And then 6 months goes by, and I realize, my goodness, I'm glad that happened because it made me do this, or it reshaped my business, and think about where
I
you're
can
at
pick
now.
4 of those right off the bat.
Yeah, tell me about it, man.
Well, I mean, you don't have to tell all, but I mean, it's just a good example would just be your main employees, right? You have an employee. I had a couple of employees that I had for almost 8 or 9 years, and they decide, which a lot of entrepreneurs are going to run into, right? I can do this just as good as you.
Right.
Bye.
Right.
And you're like, oh, geez, right?
Yeah.
And that happened a couple of times to me over the years. And that was when I realized, number one, I never wanted to be handcuffed by any employee ever again. Ever. Whether they're there or not, I wanted to set my company up to be able to run with or without those people. And it came down to certain training stuff, changing things to be able to get people to a level in a certain period of time, because rapping in and of itself is almost like an apprenticeship, journeymanship. I mean,
Dude, it's an art.
I've
watched you, and this is like, holy,
So,
there's zero possibility I could do that.
It takes
That's
time, and so I had to get to where I could train people fast and effectively to do what needs to be done. My machines, I had somebody leave that was running machines, and I didn't really know how to run my own machines. I mean, I was running the biz, right?
Right.
And I'm like, holy cow. And so I get in there, and immediately I'm like, I don't like the way this is running. I can make this more efficient. And you don't know until you're there. Like, for all those years, I'm like, man, I was screwing up. I was wasting money, all this. I could have been more effective, more efficient had I been doing it this way. But I never would have known had that not happened.
Yep.
I went in there within 4 days. It was 4 days. I completely changed the process and eliminated the need for the style of person I had in there. And I could literally hire you, bring you in, and within 1 week, get you to where you could be handling things. And within a month, you pretty much could own it, run it, and do it. Whereas before that, the way that it was set up, I had people that were there for a year, 2 years, and never learned how to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, just, oh my God. And you're like, and that's when you beat yourself up as an entrepreneur. You're like, man, I was an idiot.
Oh,
Absolute idiot.
How many times I've said that to myself?
I mean, the biggest thing is if you cannot have pride, like you just,
Yep.
and just, I screwed up, I own it. How do I move forward? Be able to do it, own it, learn from it, and move forward, right? Is the biggest thing, and not accept it. It is what it is. I screw up every day, but just big things have happened over the years where you're just like, wow. And it costs you tons of money. I mean, I guarantee over the last, 12 years, I mean, I've easily lost a couple $100,000 in just stupidity.
Yeah, I'm not agreeing with your. I'm just thinking. For myself.
Yeah.
You just, it's about systems, developing systems.
Yeah.
Because, and then I'll see this, and I'm sure you've seen this, where you see an employee doing something that's not how you would want it done. Mm-hmm. And for me, I've seen this happen, and then I have to go, dude, this is my fault. Mm-hmm. I didn't tell them how I want it done. I expected them to know how I want it done, because to me, it'll be, well, that's common sense. But just because it's my common sense doesn't mean it's their common sense.
Yeah,
and it doesn't even mean that it's my common sense is the right common sense. Yeah. So I'm really learning about that.
I need everybody to read my mind.
Yes.
And to be as vested and work as hard as right? And it's never going to happen.
Right.
And that was a huge thing I had to learn. You
Yeah.
know, is the expectations, and my wife was huge on that. You know, like nobody's ever gonna work like you work. It's just not, they're not,
Yep.
you know, you, number one, and that's where that like ADD thing, like you just go, you put your head down and 6 months later I look around, right? That's not the norm. So you
Right.
need to slow the roll and understand that people are going to come in, they're going to work their 8 hours, and that's when I started researching even that, right? You know, they're there for 8 hours, and statistically you get maybe 60%, 70% out of them. So in 8 hours you might get, 6 hours worth of work, 7 hours worth of work, maybe, and that'd be high.
Yeah.
Where I mean, you watch my steps, I'll walk anywhere from 16,000 to 25,000 steps in a day. That's 12 miles. I don't stop. Never hardly am at my desk. I have a desk, and I still don't have an office to this day. There's no reason. I can't hold still. So go with those expectations, set realistic expectations for them, and guidelines is what I've done more, kind of a left and right boundary, right? And they'll bounce off of them a little bit. Every once in a while they get outside and you gotta tap them inside the boundaries. But if you just give them, what we call like standard operating guidelines, right? There's procedures, there's procedural things on the wrap end, but in certain things it's just guidelines, and I've had a lot of guys do stuff, and I watch people, they look at it differently, they do it differently, and you're like, wow, it was brilliant.
Yeah.
Right? And use it, right? And don't be afraid to see some 2-year guy do something, you're like, how did I never think of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And is it okay? Does it achieve the goal? Does it do it in a reasonable amount of time? And go for it. It doesn't have to. And that was the big thing, is learning to let go of some control.
Yeah. Good stuff.
And we've lost customers because of it. There's no question. You let control. Where me, it's always going to be 100%. But then I'm dead in 10 years of a heart attack.
Yeah.
I'm not okay with that. So, and having him, huge difference.
And so Nick, you grew up watching this business, hearing the terminology, hearing your dad come home, and I'm sure probably complained once or twice about an employee, or
rarely,
the highs and lows, all the stuff. But now you're in the business. What's that been like? Like where you're actually there, like every day now, right?
It was definitely a life change, because I went from just labor, because that was the only job for either while I was in high school or I was in college. The only things that would help support anything that made me at least a decent amount of money, besides going and working at McDonald's, was labor. So that's what I decided to do, and I liked it. I enjoyed it, but the issue is I'm too much like him. I didn't want to work for people. I didn't like going to a job where I'm there because I either want to pay for schooling or take a friend out to go eat, and you're here trying to support your whole family. Just because you made the life choices you made, and you're 60 years old working concrete, does not mean me at 18 working concrete needs to be set to your standards and your issues. And it was just the same issue through every single labor job, always being disrespected, always being the lowest on the ladder because you're young, doing the hardest work, and I was just tired of it. So I wanted to change, and I wanted to do something that I would be invested in and would actually invest in me back, not just like a job where you go there and this is where you're going to stay, and no matter how good you do, that's where there's no room for moving up.
Right.
And I was like, well, I'd rather go somewhere where that I'm cared about, and I actually, my time is valuable, the people there value me, and overall I can make an actual difference. It's not just the same thing every single day. And then it was being able to work with my dad, of course, working with family. It's always going to be better than working with some random person you don't know, and you're just forced to work there because you both need a paycheck. But it's been a lot different. It's a learning curve for sure, going from all right, here's your daily list of things to hammer and screw together, and now it's, hey, accounts receivable, accounts payable, you need to make sure the schedule's set up.
It's a little bit more.
Has the material been ordered? Do they know what they're doing? So there's a lot to learn, but I also enjoy learning it.
Yeah.
I being stagnant in like a job and just doing the same thing, I lose interest so quick. So now
Yeah.
there's no 2 days that are the same now. Every single day has a new issue or opportunity,
Yeah.
whatever way you want to look at it. But it's been fun, and I enjoyed it a lot. But the biggest part was not using my body anymore. I didn't want to do that. I saw too many people, too many older guys that I've been working with for only a few years who couldn't move or crippled, their bodies hurt, and I was like, I don't want to be like you. Like, why would I want? There's opportunity to make money and not hurt my body. I'm gonna go with that route moving forward.
Yeah.
And then that's why we also got into real estate as well, because it was looks like we could make the most money with the least amount of physical labor. And then we got into it and we realized it's a little bit more mental labor than physical labor, obviously. But
so you do real estate right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep, we both got our license
3 years ago.
Which agency you guys work for?
The Experience Northwest.
Experience. I've heard of that.
They just kind of rolled it out. Good group of people. It was an invite.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Yeah.
And
They're
I'm sure I know
definitely
because
newer,
a lot
yeah.
of realtors come into my shop because it's a
Yeah.
easy
yeah.
place to meet people, and so I know I've heard of it. I don't right off the top of my head, I don't know anyone that's there. So the last 6 months, what's been the biggest surprise?
Managing people.
Yeah, you
Yes.
probably never had to do that. Really?
No. Well, most of the
Before?
time I was always the lowest on the totem. It was like, you're the young guy, you just do what you're told. And then I went straight to the top. And it was like, now I have to organize or schedule or make the system so that I know that each step along the way, everyone is doing what they need to.
Yeah.
And doing that in a way that you can't like kill the team morale. Like if you want people to do what they need to do, which is what I want them to do, I need to portray it in a way that doesn't kill morale or make them think like, well, I'm not good enough, or he's just mad because I'm not quick enough. There's ways to go about it. Where, like,
Leave that part to me.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the I know you were talking about doing like manual labor type jobs, construction and that type of stuff, where you're, because of your age, you're the youngest guy in the totem pole, and men like the disrespect and always have to do the hardest stuff and all that junk. But all of those things have probably prepared you for this step.
Extremely, yeah.
Because now you're like, okay, dude, I know how that made me feel, and I don't want to make someone feel like,
No. And that's the biggest part. I don't want to be a hypocrite and go right into a position where I take the power of those that I didn't like before me and then do the same exact thing that they did.
Right.
I don't want to do that. And it's a family business, so everyone on the team is a family. Like, we have the fewest amount of employees that we've had, but the greatest production that's coming out of it, the team spirit, the community that you're walking into when you get there is no longer like, oh, it's just a 9 to 5.
Yeah, that's cool.
We've got people who want to be there, want to work, want to see the company succeed, which does make my life easier, because if I'm combating people who didn't want to be there, then it would just make my life 10 times harder. So being where we're at has helped a ton, because I bet you if I was somewhere else and I did the same exact position, it would not be as smooth of a transition. I was lucky that I just got to go into a family business where a majority of the people they already knew who I was. I've been coming in and out for years, saying hi, maybe making a few extra bucks around the shop, but I think it was definitely a long process, but it was a good long process.
And he's been in and out for years. He's had to scrape things, come with me on jobs, do the cruddiest of cruddiest stuff, like peeling old rat. The reality is he didn't just go here, right?
Right.
For years, I've had him doing all of this.
Oh, yeah.
And even when I had him start, before that 6 months, he was kind of in there helping as we were working towards it. And I just said, "What are your bills? How much are your bills?" They're this much. And I said, "I'll pay you $200 more than that," which wasn't a lot.
No.
To work his butt off. Like if I say, "Hey Dave, come work for me," I'm like, "What are your bills?" And I'm like, "I'm just gonna give you just enough, $50 a week to maybe go to dinner, do whatever, right?" But he's had to work his way all the way through all that. Like, yep, you only get this much you know.
Yeah.
And
Well, sometimes we're
earn it.
Yeah, sometimes I know for our, our kids, I've got 5, and I think all of them have at one time or another, well, not all think, they all have at one time or another worked in either Brooks stores or my shop. And I know a lot of times, and you could probably relate, as the parent, you're a little bit more, I don't know if strict, but the expectations for your kids are higher.
Oh, 100%.
Because you're like, dude.
Oh, yeah.
I raised you better than that.
I want you to work this hard for this much. That's pretty much, like because to me, it wasn't you're there to work. I'm actually there to teach you lessons more than anything.
Yeah.
Is really what it boiled down to. How to work, right? If I'm doing this, you're not standing, you're doing this, right? There's always something to do. Where are you looking? What's next? And it was more about lesson learning, right? You're just fortunate that I'm teaching you and paying you at the same time. That's the way I look at it.
Take your employer hat off,
Mm-hmm.
now put your dad hat on. Because you, obviously, you see him do all the dumb middle school boy stuff, and this, not to disrespect you, but, we're junior high, boys are just.
Oh, it was junior high and high school.
High school, yeah, they're just goofballs,
Yep, that's one way to put it.
So now you're talking about what it's like being a dad and having your son work there, and I mean obviously he's still your son, but there's almost more like that peer, now it's another adult working there. What's that like, as the dad?
I love it, but I think we've attempted, Shannon and I, to raise our kids up. Your goal is to do better than your dad. My dad was like, hopefully I do better than my dad, and so my goal was to raise them right, but to try and have a better relationship or friendship with them, where my dad was a little bit stricter.
Yeah.
And that was putting it mildly, but it was just, this and you work and that's what you do. And I wanted my kids to enjoy. I mean, I started working when I was 13. By 16 and a half, I moved out. And so I didn't do proms. I didn't enjoy things. I worked. That's what you worked. You worked.
Yeah.
I wanted my kids to work and understand it, but I also wanted them to enjoy high school. If they can go to college, he graduated with a bachelor's. I'm not there to pay for the whole thing. I'll help you, but at the same time, go try and experience. Because the thing was, I was like, man, you got your whole life to work. Your whole life. Don't be in a hurry. Enjoy prom, enjoy homecoming. If I can help you enjoy that stuff for just that little bit of life, do it. And so I think, like I will say, middle school and high school, he's butthead. He's not amazing. But he grew out of it, he came around, and I think all of my kids, my wife and I, we love being with our kids. We enjoy it. Yeah. And what's cool with your kiddos as they get older, for me at least, is I'm not dad as much, right? Like every day, hey, love you, Dad, and hugs before we come and go to work, and all that.
Exactly what you're saying.
But I get to work with my friend. You know what I mean? Like,
100%.
You've taught him lessons. He knows how to be a man, and there'll be times where he'll ask about certain things, life lessons, relationship, whatever it is, and that's awesome. And you're still a dad at that point. But a lot of it now is just being a friend with them, right? You're just enjoying life, and you're doing it together. It is, and I love it,
Yeah.
And fortunately, I think because of the way we raise the kids, we can do this differently. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like that, like with my dad. Like I just had no desire, because it was just where I'm like, hey, I've done this. I'd love to see you do it, and just grow with him and help him, and it's because I have a lot. I mean, we've only talked about 2 of the companies. We have several now. So
Well, talk to me, man.
it's just, it's a lot. It's just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know, because my girls, they don't work for me full time, but they work, You know, they're in there, I don't know, probably a couple of days a week or whatever. And they work for the store as well, the social media stuff and all the stuff. And so I find myself oftentimes having to go to my kids. Okay, how do I do this?
Oh yeah.
You know, like I have no idea what's going on here.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm not a real technical person, and
I
so,
hired somebody. That's all, you know, and that's become literally one of the companies. You know, is the Sammy C-Dub brand, right? You know, YouTube, Instagram, and all that stuff, and we have several 100,000 followers now, and we're monetized, so it's a job. Like we have GoPros every day. Things got to be set up. Things got to be done. I have to schedule certain times if we're going to do DIYs, and because once you get monetized, like you don't want to go backward, and trying to come up with stuff day after day, week after week, month after month. It's just work. I mean, there's times where I'd just soon not have anything. And I mean, when I say nothing to do it, like nothing. Delete them all off my phone and never have anything to do with it. But it's also been a huge blessing to my business. I mean, it's massive. And so that has its own thing. And then you asked about the signs. I did. I acquired a couple other sign companies over the last couple of years, and we pulled the sign part out of wraps because we could make signs for people, right? And so it's like, yeah, we do it. But to try and not to keep things from being convoluted and whatnot, and Nick helps run both of them now, is CW Signs does signs and banners, period. Stickers, basically the sticky back stuff, wraps, logos on cars, windows, floors, goes through wraps.
Okay.
And so the two are separate, you know, entities. They're both their own S corps. They both do their own thing. Real estate, it's a separate thing. And then we just rolled out the upfitter division, which was we do all the cop cars, right? We put, you know, they don't come black and white from the factory. Everyone thinks they come painted, and they show up black or they show up white, and we do everything to it. And then they usually would ship them out to have lights, sirens, all that. And we've been asked for several years, man, you guys do this? Could you know, you do all the graphics, man, if we could just send it to you and you do all of it, which is a huge undertaking. I mean,
holy
that's
buckets, yeah, it is.
like, I mean, that's.
So I mean, the lights and all that stuff.
Would you?
And so you just do it at your location.
Yeah,
I was like,
shop.
that's what I was trying to. That was why my mind. I was like, oh, okay, how does that fit?
No,
Whole nother
it
shop.
doesn't. Had to get a whole nother shop to do it, and so we have a couple guys out there. They're out there right out by Pleasant View and SLT, so at the other end, and it's. I mean, we're doing cop cars, and just same thing with the wraps end. You know, you kind of do whatever you need to do to get things going, and I have phenomenal guys out there. I mean, best of the best, and so somebody's like, "Can you do, you know, all kinds of things? Can you do a tonneau cover? Can you do new steps for us? Can you do a supercharger? Can we do you know, disconnecting front sway bar on my FJ40? Absolutely,
Oh, so you
without
do
question.
all the stuff.
So now we're doing some pretty high end, like custom builds, like pretty insane. Yeah.
Well, I was. Yeah, that's crazy. That's a huge. How long have you been doing that?
Year.
Wow. So you're in the infancy stages of it.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. That's crazy.
Infancy, but it's crazy once you know certain things. Like I put processes in place immediately.
Yeah.
You know how that goes. Like,
Yeah. It's so important.
I immediately got a thing called Shop Monkey where they can process payments right through it, send invoices out, document, keep track of everything that's going on, CRM, all of that in one spot right off the bat, day one.
Yeah.
Like, we're no writing on notebook, none of that in the very beginning, right, where you're just kind of like, I was like, this is the process immediately. This is the phone number. This is how the biz runs day one. So that so we could actually scale, because that's where I've run into issues is you get to a point and certain things cap you out, which is I'm there right now with the wrap and sign end to an extent. We have to do more through the internet now, through online ordering, and our customer management doesn't flow as well as I like. And there's a million systems out there, and trying to evaluate them all, and somebody's like, oh, ours is so robust, which means it's overly complicated, right? I don't even, when I talk to those people, I'm like, I don't want robust. I want simple, right?
Yeah.
When we were at Smith's, their system, Lead Rocket, was probably one of the best systems I've actually ever used.
Yeah.
It was
that
the
good system.
easiest,
Yeah.
simplest, kept track of everything, one spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was definitely nice because it was easy to use.
Mhm.
And easy to use for me is
Yep. Well, they knew what they were doing. You dummy proofed it, right?
Yeah.
We can bring anybody in, and that's the goal. I mean, you do have to do that as a biz owner,
yeah.
because you got to kind of dummy down things, keep it simple so that they can come in and be able to function instead of making it overly complicated, because then you make your hiring process more difficult. Cost of employee raises at that point.
Yep.
Everything is tougher and more expensive.
Yep. Big time. It's crazy how, when you open a business, okay, hey, I'm gonna whatever, wrap cars, I'm gonna put decals on, whatever, and then you realize, okay, I've got to be an HR person, I've got to be an attorney, I've got to be a bookkeeper, I've got to be
he's learning all
an
that,
accountant,
right?
I've got to be a social media expert, I've got to be a janitor, it's like,
I got to be a counselor, a dad. I've got 4 guys that work for me. Not this, I think, was definitely a godly thing, but 4 guys that work for me that did not have great upbringings, right? Or a father in their life, which was hugely mind-blowing. I didn't realize it until I actually kind of put it all together. And so there's times where, and he's been there for him, and he's heard the talks, right? Where sometimes the talks that I have with the guys is not a work talk. It's like, hey, this one, we're just going to have more of the dad talk, about what it is to be, and why it's important to me for you guys to be good young men first, right? If you're good men, you'll be better for your wife, your girlfriends, everything, your kids one day, and you're better at the job if you're a better person, right? And so we focus on that pretty big time as well. I mean, we're not there just banging stuff out. We're supposed to have impacts in people's lives for the positive as well, and so we have to be involved in we're still small enough where Dave comes in and it's like, man, he's in a mood today, what's going on? And and you find out what's going on with them, maybe they just need a chat, maybe something happened, dad died, whatever it is. It makes a different connection in your biz, and it creates a home for those people instead of just a clock in, clock out,
right?
Which that alleviates, hopefully down the road, as much turnover, right? You have people that are like, I found a place where I'm comfortable, this is my home. And you get rid of that stress in their life of, I got to find a job. That's just a horrible one.
Yeah. Well, you said you are going to turn 50?
Yeah, we have to bring that up during this whole thing.
Because I'm way past that. That's in my rearview mirror.
Yeah.
So, I mean, my point is, I look at you, I'm like, dude, you're a young dude, man. But you're at the stage of, I'm guessing, I don't think people like you probably ever retire. Even when you retire, you're still gonna. I don't even know if retirement is a good thing.
I don't think so.
You see, like, what do you? I don't get it. Like, I always think I'm gonna do something. I just, it's gonna, as I progress through the stages of life, what I do is probably different.
Right.
Because your body it needs to be different. But if you don't mind me asking or whatever, have you thought about, like, now you've got your son working for you. Mm-hmm. Have you thought about, like, what, like, succession planning? Mm-hmm. Like what?
Like exit strategies.
Yeah, like, have you thought about that at all, or is that too early in the game?
Oh, no. No. Technically, you're supposed to start a business with a strategy of how to exit the business.
Right.
Technically, right? When you build it, which is why, like, the one that we just did, the upfitter one, right? It is set up with process in place right off the bat. and I've implemented people without any real major input from me. Like where, CW Raps and then, Sammy CW, it's like, it's kind of built around me, which is not ideal, right? And I've pulled out and I've separated on that quite a bit. But to exit it, when Nick came in, I mean, it was awesome, right? Like I'd much rather somebody that is as invested or whatnot is great. I mean, right now my second oldest boy, Giovanni's at the shop working. He's starting to be there. They're getting to that age. And so my goal was put the right people in place that are employees there, that these guys can come in and work with them and alongside them, and then I'll be, the CEO or the president or whatever, but I'm kind of more behind the scenes working on just helping them grow or do whatever it is, but the day-to-day they'll run,
Yeah.
And then when they're like, man, Dad, I think, we need a new CRM, or we got to figure out a place, this is just too small. We're losing revenue by being so small. How do we grow? And that's where I can come in and help, and that would be what I would love to do. Just continue to build. I love seeing them succeed. I love seeing the employees have more opportunities and succeed and grow them. But to do all of that, you can't be in there, and that's the old adage, you got to work on your biz instead of in your biz. 100%.
Yeah.
And so with all of them, they're all set up, to where I'm starting to try and back out a little bit.
Yeah.
And just be more relational with the clients and selling, doing that kind of stuff, meeting, but then letting everyone else handle it. Let them be the bosses. Let them own it and have that pride in what's going out instead of it being me.
Yeah.
Which is huge.
Yeah, definitely. It definitely is the only way you can really grow is when you start working on the business rather than in the business.
But it's harder said than done. I mean,
it is, especially when you see something that's like, that's my reputation on the line, and I don't really like how that looks or whatever.
So you immediately are in it, right?
Yeah.
And then once you jump in, well, it's so much easier to be in the biz than it is, for me at least, than it is to try and pull myself out and just work on it.
Yeah, because, what you guys do is as far as the wrapping stuff goes, and actually the signs, it's artwork. It's not like, like...
Two designers. Couldn't do it without them.
Right, but I mean, it's not like I'm nailing 2x4s together and, A screws into B and B screws into C.
Yes.
It's artwork. And I mean, in the little stuff you've done for, my vehicles, I'm like, dude, how do you
But it's all visual, right? It's so visual that if anything's not right, people are,
right.
immediately like, what's and so you just...
Because I'm sure you guys work on freaking expensive cars, and someone's got a really expensive car, which obviously comes with a really expensive paint job, and then they're gonna put a wrap on it. You're like, dude, it has to be
perfect.
It has to be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not, at least I don't want to bring I don't have a super expensive car. But, because I've been there before. I think you guys did some work on a 4Runner of mine. But I went in there and I can't remember what the car was. It was some crazy sports car. I'm like, holy buckets, someone's wrapping that. And then you were like, oh yeah, people, they do it all the time. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So we got really
just
nice.
had a GT3 leave. That one was fun.
Yeah.
Porsche GT3.
Holy buckets.
Fog out the headlights, put some cool stripes. Yeah. It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the artist in you has to be able to be like, okay, what about this? Or because I'm sure you guys get, I'm guessing that you guys get people that come in that have the super nice car, and they're just like, dude, I just want this to be really cool.
Yeah.
But they can't articulate because they don't even know what's possible.
Yeah.
You do this. They don't even know that's even a possibility. And so you guys have to be.
That's the beginning. Most people don't even know what we do. I get people who call, and they're like, is this CW Wraps? I go, yeah. They go, sweet, I have a question. Do you guys wrap cars? Yes.
Yes. I think we've done one.
So now we're at the first stage. We wrap cars, yes. But I tell everyone everything we do is custom. Like, oh, what do you have in stock? No, we don't do stock. Everything is custom made for exactly what the customer wanted on their specific vehicle.
It's super cool.
Everything is a custom job, and they're like, "You can do that? Yep, you can do that? Yeah." Like, okay, cool.
It's cool, but it's hard.
Oh.
I mean,
No,
there's
I
certain
look at it,
aspects
I'm like-
where it'd be really nice if you just did this right over and over.
No, just the tedious,
Oh
like,
my goodness gracious.
my fingers don't function that way. So I'm like, there's zero possibility I could do it. You know, I can't cut a straight line. So like, and then, you know, like I saw you using like a razor, like, I think this was on a car where you're cutting the wrap, but you're not scratching the car.
Yeah.
That's intense, man.
Cutting the balloons challenge. You wrap a balloon and then you cut the
Yeah,
vinyl without
I'd
cutting
pop
the
it
balloon.
every time.
My new
It'd
guys
be-
usually do.
It wouldn't be 9 out of 10. It would be 10 out of 10. I would pop it.
Oh, we do. I mean, I've put it on my hands. I put it on the back of my hand and cut the vinyl, so that people understand, right? Like, but the level that I do it versus maybe one of my new guys, right?
Right.
And so we have a lot of different techniques that we've put together over the years, and there's advancements like knifeless tape, basically, and it cuts the vinyl from the back. So we use that a lot, and it
Okay.
just reduces somebody having to have that skill.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they'll get it, but I don't have to stress on them doing it. 90% or more we can do with knifeless tape now.
Wow.
So that we're either
Yeah.
cutting an empty area on a vehicle, which would be a door jamb or something, so you're not cutting on it. And if you have to be on the vehicle, we can use knifeless tape on 99% of it.
Wow.
And
That's cool.
so then you don't end up having any issues,
Yeah.
which we definitely don't want.
And I don't remember exactly what you were doing, but you were doing something very technical, and I was just like, dude, I think like I was in there watching your whatever when my Toyota was in there, and I was like, holy buckets.
We get a good amount of people that like to just, I mean, I used to have an old guy, I don't know if he's still around, but he used to come in with a coffee, he'd just hang out, watch us wrap, he loved it, he'd just sit there, you know, because it's just something that, I mean, unless you go there, you're never gonna see it. You don't know, you know.
I didn't. I mean, it was fascinating for me, even though I knew you wrapped cars.
Right.
I just didn't know, like,
the process.
yeah, the
all of
process
it.
is pretty fascinating.
Nobody knows the process at all.
Yeah, it's
You've learned that when it comes
Nobody
to the
knows
price.
the
They're like, geez, $3,000, you know, and you're like, well, yeah.
I just
Here,
started bringing
let's
people next
walk
door.
you through everything, and once they see things, they're like, gosh, like it just don't. I mean,
Right.
the machines that we use to print and make things, right? I mean, they don't give those away. You
No,
know?
I'm guessing
The designers that I have, especially, they're not free, right?
Yeah.
The guys that I have running the machines, I have 2 machines out there that equal out $250,000. You're not going to hire somebody at $15 an hour to run $250,000 worth of machinery. It's just
Right,
not
right.
going to happen.
And it's crazy when people, you know, like will question prices on things.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, that only took like 3 hours. And you're like, well, yeah, but your price included the cost it cost me to run this machine.
The person, the
my
taxes,
20 years of
yes.
expertise on learning this stuff.
Yeah.
There's like,
Yeah.
there's a lot that goes into all
I
of
used
that
to.
stuff.
It used to take me a week to do a vehicle. I can do one in a day. If I really am doing it, I can do it in a day or less, and way better than I did. But I mean, that's only. I mean, you're talking. I mean, millions and millions and millions of squeegee strokes, right? Literally,
Right.
millions and millions.
Yeah, when you were talking about earlier, we talked about, you know, you've had employees like learn everything, and they're like, dude, I can do this on my own, because they see the guy writing the $3,000 or $5,000 check, and like, oh my gosh, dude, I can make bank, and they have no idea that. I mean, they don't even think about the
Material.
okay. The heat that I'm heating this building with, the lights, the insurance, you know, the L&I that I'm paying. They don't even understand remotely what goes into, you know, that
They think you just got $5,000.
yeah, that the portion
I'm
of that
lucky if I
$5,000
keep
is like,
$500 of that, right?
yeah, I know,
Like,
it's crazy,
it's-
and people just don't even grasp that, and then, you know, when someone leaves, the fact that you got to retrain someone, and then it's just all that is dollars.
Yep.
And
That's where people get lost, though, in trying to. They think they can own and run a biz when, in all actuality, there's a difference between owning and running a biz or just creating your own job, right?
Right.
Big difference, you know, and in the beginning it's a job. You got to go. It's your own, right? But at some point you're like, okay, I want this to be a business. I don't want it to be my job.
Right.
And the benefit is I can come in, or I could not come in the morning. I could say I'm leaving at noon and going golfing.
Right.
My business runs, right? So now it's not a job for me. It is my business and my company. I just choose to go in as often as I do because, like we talked about, I mean, oh my God, my wife's going to give me 100 things to do at the house that are going to cost money, right? I'm like, I'm going to work, right? And I get to hang out with him and we play with cool cars. So
Yeah, that's cool.
it's like,
When I had a conversation with my mom about how to get him out of the office, we both sat there and we were like, yeah, it's not even an option at this point. She was like, what would Dad do? I was like, well, I don't know. I guess I kind of have to have him at the shop. I don't really have a choice.
I don't, it's, and like, I don't know. I'll never retire. And that's
Right.
why I started all these things. I want to grow them. I want to see people have the opportunity to be successful and have, I mean, my goal is eventually maybe I don't sell to any one big entity. I sell to the employees, right? And they become owners of the businesses. I would love that.
Yeah.
Now they're vested in it. They have the opportunity to grow, and they still have me as a part owner in there to help. And they're not doing it on their own. They didn't have to start from the ground up and go through everything that I did.
Yeah.
Which, not that it's bad, it's just not everybody would
Yeah.
probably make it through all
Yeah,
of that.
there's a certain
Most people wouldn't.
level of, I think it's grit,
Yeah.
perseverance, you know, just, it's the grind, man,
Yeah.
that,
You have to do it,
yeah,
no matter what.
yeah.
Whether
Unless you
they talk
invent
about that's a
something that,
discipline, right? Doing something you don't want to do, no, like, just
Even if
period,
you
right? Being
have
able
to do
to
it.
be disciplined to do it day in and out, like going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever. Discipline is I think what they say is what really
yeah,
having that
yeah,
discipline.
it's, what was it? I'm probably gonna butcher this, but it's the willingness to do the ordinary things all the time so they can become the extraordinary
Mhm.
rather than, you know, not, you know, like I'm going to do the ordinary things once in a while when I feel like it
Right.
and hope that it becomes extraordinary,
Yeah.
which happens like, you know, less than
It
half
happens.
a percent of the time.
It happens.
It
There's
happens. Oh, yeah.
somebody, you know.
I invented the whatever.
Me,
and then-
unfortunately, I have never had
No.
that. Oh my
No.
gosh, this turned into a $10 million company overnight. I lucked out. No, and I haven't
Yeah,
had
I
those.
haven't had that either. Well, guys, you know, just want to say thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm really hoping to create this little podcast for entrepreneurs, just to hear stories
Mhm.
from other entrepreneurs and realize that even if it's a completely different industry, I own a janitorial service, or I make widgets, or I have a,
Right.
you know, wrapping cars. Dude, the struggles are very, very similar. You know, we all deal with this stuff.
Once you really dive in, it's all the same.
It kind of
You have
is.
the ARs, the APs, you have the employees, you have the HR. It's all the same thing. And then you got profit and loss. And
Yep.
either you're in the black or you're the red.
Yep.
It's all,
But just to help people realize they're not alone.
Mhm.
Like, oh my goodness, this struggle, man. You know, and you hear people's struggles and like, dude, if they can come back from that struggle, maybe I can. And hoping to give people a little bit of, you know, encouragement, you know, because obviously, you know, it's like this, man.
yeah.
And I mean, there's
Yeah.
days which I'm sure over the last 13, I'm
Yeah.
freaking,
I've
I'm locking the key and I'm not
I
coming
have come
back.
home and said, I'm done. I'm selling everything. Like,
Yes.
done. You know, not a lot, but I would say
Yeah.
a handful of times I was like, I'm finished. This is
And then-
it, you know.
And then 2 days later, it's, dude,
oh, yeah.
I created the best